What if I told you if nobody dislikes you, you're doing something wrong? And I learned that the hard way. I always saw myself as the guy who gets along with everybody. No drama, no conflicts, just good vibes. And I liked that. One day someone said something to me that made me question my whole self-image. Took me just one sentence to question everything I thought about myself. Let's go back in time a little. It was my second year at university, and I was living in a shared apartment with several people, and the whole building was full of students. It was the kind of place where the walls were thin, the chairs didn't match, and there was always the smell of questionable leftovers in the fridge. It was a place where everybody knew each other. And I had a neighbor. Let's call him Mark. And Mark was the kind of guy who never sugarcoated anything. He was quite straightforward. We weren't best friends, but I thought we'd get along. At least I thought we did. One day we were getting ready for a party in our apartment. Our parties were legendary, by the way. We had all the fun you could have. We had a table kicker table, we had DJ music, we had a room, it was usually my room where we would jam music and just improvise. And we even had like old Nintendo games, so it was full of icebreakers, amazing parties. I really loved that. So we were planning one of those, and I was just casually chatting with Mark about who was coming, who wouldn't come. And just, normal conversation, nothing dramatic at this point. I said, Mark, will you come tomorrow? Yeah, I think Jose and I will both be there later. Who else is coming? John, Lisa, Anna, Michael, they're all coming. But we have a lot that haven't confirmed yet. And I don't know why. Maybe they have other plans, or maybe they just don't want to come. And then out of nowhere, Mark said, or they just don't like you. What do you mean? And I went, I guess. I know it wasn't an insult, and it wasn't even said with any malice. It just really bothered me. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. You can't be liked by everyone? What does it even mean? I was never thinking about that before. I mean, why did it bother me so much? I had always taken it for granted that people liked me. I mean, I wasn't loud, I wasn't rude, I got along with most people, So why was this bothering me so much? Should I try harder? Am I not good enough? So moving forward to the party, and I was talking about music and mentioning the Beatles. And one thing you have to know about me is that I absolutely love the Beatles ever since I've heard the first album. And there's literally always a song that is just stuck in my head. I am almost every day singing one of their songs. So I was hyping up the Beatles, and I said to my friend that was talking to me, they're literally the greatest bands of all time. I mean, they basically invented pop music. I basically said what any drunk student would say about their favorite bands. And you know who joined the conversation? It was Mark. You remember Mark. Straightforward, strong opinions. And he said, I actually hate the Beatles. Mark. And I go, you're joking, right? But Mark wasn't joking. Hate the Beatles? I was so confused. And of course I would jump into a passionate defense about why he was obviously wrong and why the Beatles are so great. But before I could go into detail, another friend, let's call him Chris, leaned over and said, be more like the Beatles, man. And I'm still furious. And I hear that, and I'm still furious about what Mark said about the Beatles. And I said, what's that even supposed to mean? Chris took a sip of his drink, and he said, they didn't care if everyone liked them. Be more like the Beatles. Be more like the Beatles. I kept thinking to myself, yeah, even the Beatles, one of the most legendary bands in history, were not liked by everyone. Of course not. If the Beatles were not liked by everyone, what made me think that I could ever be? Oh man, of course people don't like me, and that's a good thing. I mean, that means that I have some edges. If everybody would like me, that would be horrible. If everybody would like me, there wouldn't be a true self that they could like, actually, because I would hide it. I need to be braver. I need to be much more okay with being disliked, or not, going back to not thinking about it and being fine with it, Before that comment made me self-conscious about it, right? About my assumptions. Be more like the Beatles. Be more like the Beatles. Chris, you crazy little genius. I mean, if Paul McCartney lost sleep every time someone didn't like Yesterday, he wouldn't have written Let It Be. And if John Lennon needed approval from everyone, he wouldn't have written Imagine and all those other wonderful songs. Maybe I didn't need to be everybody's favorite song. Maybe I just need to play my own tune. Chris didn't know how much I needed to hear that. But I raised my glass, looked into his eyes, and we cheersed. And I said, all right, I'll be more like the Beatles. Now, let's see if Lisa's still around and still single. As you can imagine, the party was pretty good overall. We all had a lot of fun, played Nintendo games, danced, and made music. But that wasn't even the biggest takeaway for me. I mean, during my student years, every time somebody asked me to study with them, I would say yes, even though I knew that I would never learn as effectively as if I would be alone, learning for myself. I would be distracted, I would be having conversations. But I would say yes. And when friends wanted me to join a party, of course I said yes. I didn't want to miss out, and I wanted to be with them, and I was happy that they asked me, even though I had to finish a paper that was important for me, for a subject that I cared about. So I was the typical yes sayer in university, the typical guy that cannot say no, that is always happy if somebody is around, and I would be having FOMO if people do something without me. But I learned to say no more often, and I learned to put less effort into what I want people to perceive me as. Especially, I would care less about the people that are not close to me, right? Like Mark. It took me years to process that, of course, but this moment really opened my eyes. It really shook me and changed the way I thought about myself and challenged my assumptions. And it helped me to get me to where I am now. And it's almost like the pendulum swings to the other side. Now I say no most of the time because I really want to finish my projects, because I have stuff that is important to me. I want to write my ideas, I want to make my videos and do inner work practices, right? So sometimes I even need to give myself a push now to meet with people, because I tend to be just very stuck at home, and I'm much more introverted and much more about, I need to do my thing, I need to protect my boundaries. So sometimes I need to loosen up a little bit more. So what about you? Where in your life are you sacrificing your own tune just to be liked? Where are you holding back, editing yourself, trying to keep everyone happy at the cost of your own voice? Do you think you should be more like the Beatles? Or more like the Rolling Stones, if that's the band you like more? Because I learned not everybody likes the Beatles. I mean, the Rolling Stones really didn't give a damn, eh? I'll leave you with 3 powerful questions that will help you to combat the inner people pleaser in you. In what areas of your life do you find it hard to say no? Where in your life would you like to be more assertive? What difference would that make to you? And I want you to imagine something. What's the absolute worst that could happen if someone doesn't like you? Will they chase you down the street with a pitchfork? Will they start a global petition to cancel you? Will they write a 10-page essay on why you are the worst person alive? Or will they just move on with their day, barely giving it any second thought? And if that's the case, why are you spending so much energy to prevent it? Be more like the Beatles. All you need is love. Love is all you need. Sorry, I couldn't stop it.